May 29, 1453. The sun rises over the Bosporus, painting the sky in hues of crimson and ash. A dawn that feels more like a requiem. The air carries the bitter tang of smoke, the distant thud of war drums, and the roar of cannon fire shattering the stillness. Men kneel in the streets, their prayers barely audible over the chaos. Others weep, clutching crosses and icons, their faces etched with dread. Constantinople, once the radiant heart of the civilized world, teeters on the edge of annihilation. This isn't merely the tale of a siege. It's the story of an empire, born from the legacy of Augustus Caesar, gasping its final breath. And how that breath's echo would reshape the world forever. Rome was never just a city. It was a vision, a promise of law, empire, and unyielding order. When the Western Roman Empire collapsed in 476 AD, torn apart by barbarian invasions and rot, the East stood resolute. Constantinople, founded by Emperor Constantine the Great in 330 AD, emerged as the new Rome. Like its predecessor, it sprawled across 7 hills, its streets alive with marble forums, golden domes, and libraries preserving the wisdom of antiquity. Its triple-layered Theodosian walls towered as a bulwark against a fracturing world, while Christianity became its heartbeat, uniting its people under a divine mission. For 1,000 years, this city defied the tides of history. Huns, Avars, Persians, Arabs, Bulgars, Russians, all crashed against its gates and were repelled. Constantinople was Rome reborn, a cultural jewel, an intellectual haven, a fortress of resilience. But by the 15th century, that light was dimming. Surrounded by enemies it could no longer outlast. The Byzantine Empire, heir to Rome's majesty, once spanned from Spain to Syria. But centuries of turmoil had eroded its strength. The Fourth Crusade in 1204 left a scar that never faded. Western Christians, driven by greed, sacked their own holy city, reducing it to a hollow shell. Civil wars splintered its rulers. The Black Death scythed through its people, leaving despair in its wake. By 1453, the empire was a ghost of its former self. Just Constantinople, a few scattered islands, and a handful of outposts. Its population, once a thriving million, had shrunk to tens of thousands. Yet its walls still loomed, proud and defiant, whispering of a glory that refused to die. The question was no longer if Constantinople could triumph, it was how long it could hold on. Across the Bosporus, a storm brewed. The Ottoman Empire began as a modest tribe in Anatolia, a flicker on the edge of history. But through conquest, guile, and ambition, it grew. Sultans like Bayezid I and Murad II forged it into a colossus that devoured kingdoms. Then, in 1451, a new sultan rose, Mehmed II, a mere 21 years old, his gaze fixed on immortality. Schooled in Greek, Persian, and Arabic, he devoured tales of Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar, seeing himself as their heir. Constantinople wasn't just a target, it was his destiny. Islamic prophecy promised glory to the commander who claimed the city, a prize that had eluded even the mightiest Arab caliphs. Mehmed swore to be that conqueror, to carve his name into eternity by felling the last bastion of Rome. Mehmed II was no reckless tyrant. He was a visionary, a tactician who turned obsession into triumph. Years before the siege, he constructed the Rumeli Hisari fortress on the Bosphorus's European shore, a stone sentinel strangling Constantinople's lifelines. He studied every failed assault on the city, determined to succeed where others faltered. In his camp, he rallied an army of 80,000, disciplined janissaries, Anatolian warriors, mercenaries, and fanatics, each stirred by his promise of glory and plunder. He spoke of prophecy, of destiny, of a city ripe for the taking. And then he unveiled a weapon that would change warfare forever. Urban, a Hungarian engineer spurned by the cash-strapped Byzantines, brought Mehmed a creation of apocalyptic power. A cannon, 27 feet long, cast in bronze, it could hurl stone balls over 1,000 pounds. Dubbed the Basilica, its roar was a thunderclap that shook the earth, its shots tearing through stone like a divine judgment. Mehmed arrayed dozens of smaller cannons, but the Basilica was his crown jewel. It took hours to reload, its barrel steaming under careful watch. Yet each blast fractured the Theodosian walls, and the defenders' resolve. This was the dawn of gunpowder's age, where ancient fortifications would crumble before fire and iron. The Theodosian walls had shielded Constantinople since the 5th century. A triple-layered marvel of moats, outer ramparts and inner battlements soaring nearly 40 feet. For a millennium, they had thwarted every foe. Armies, earthquakes, time itself. Now they faced an unrelenting barrage. Day after day, the cannons pounded. Stone shattered, dust choked the air, and breaches yawned like wounds. Defenders toiled through the night, patching gaps with timber, earth, even debris from their own homes. The walls, once a symbol of invincibility, were becoming a grave marker for a dying city. At the city's core stood Emperor Constantine XI Palaiologos, a soldier, not a figurehead, tempered by decades of war and loss. He commanded just 7,000 defenders, Byzantines, Genoese volunteers led by Giovanni Giustiniani and a scattering of Western knights, against an Ottoman host 10 times their number. Food dwindled to scraps, water to a dream. He sent desperate pleas to the Pope, to Venice, to any who might heed the call. But the West, fractured by schism and self-interest, offered only silence. Constantine could have fled, could have bartered for safety. Instead, he stayed. "I will not abandon my people," he vowed. His was a courage born of inevitability, a man who knew history would measure him not by survival, but by defiance. Within the walls, life unraveled. Beneath the Hagia Sophia's dome, mothers hushed their children, their prayers drowned by the boom of cannons. Merchants hid their wares, knowing wealth might not spare them. An old soldier gazed at the horizon, smoke curling like a shroud. A child chased a ball through deserted streets, innocence clashing with the encroaching end. The city's spirit flickered, yet its people clung to hope. They recalled miracles. How the Virgin Mary turned back the Arabs in 718. Surely, they whispered, she would intervene again. But as weeks dragged on, that faith began to splinter. The air grew heavy with signs. A lunar eclipse cast a blood-red shadow over the city. Tales spread of the Virgin Mary's icon weeping oily tears. One night, the Hagia Sophia's dome glowed with an eerie light. Divine promise or grim portent, none could agree. Constantine led processions through the streets, icons raised high, hymns piercing the clamor of war. The people followed, their voices raw but resolute. To the defenders, these omens steeled their resolve. To the faithful, they were a plea for salvation. To Mehmed, peering from his camp, they were meaningless. His triumph would rise from steel, not superstition. The Golden Horn, Constantinople's sheltered harbor, was guarded by a massive iron chain, a final shield against invasion. No fleet could pierce it, so Mehmed defied the impossible. He ordered 70 ships hauled overland, across the rugged Galata hills, on greased wooden rollers. For days, men and oxen strained under flickering torches, dragging vessels a mile over earth and stone. When dawn revealed Ottoman sails within the Horn, the defenders' hearts sank. The chain had failed. The sea was lost. Constantinople was now an island, encircled, its fate sealed by a sultan's daring. May 28, 1453, the eve of ruin. In the Sophia, a final mass unfolded beneath a dome that had witnessed centuries of glory and grief. For the first time in ages, Orthodox and Catholic Christians knelt together, their differences buried under shared dread. Priests chanted in Greek and Latin, incense rising like a fragile shield. Constantine stood among his people, armor shed, tears tracing his weathered face as he prayed for a miracle he doubted would come. Outside, the Ottoman camp thrummed with fervor. Mehmed rallied his army beneath a starless sky. The city is yours for 3 days, its riches, its glory, its future. The hour was set. Before dawn on May 29, the silence shattered. Mehmed launched his assault in 3 relentless waves. First the irregulars, a swarm of mercenaries meant to tire the defenders. Then the Anatolian infantry, disciplined and fierce, their blades glinting in the torchlight. Finally, the Janissaries, Mehmed's elite, cloaked in crimson, their loyalty absolute. Cannons roared, stones splintered, and the air thickened with gunpowder's bite. Swords rang against shields, arrows fell like hail. Giustiniani crumpled, a crossbow bolt in his chest, his retreat fracturing the line. Then, disaster. The Kirkoporte gate, a forgotten passage, stood ajar. Ottoman scouts slipped through, and the walls, those eternal walls, fell at last. Amid the chaos, Constantine XI chose his end. He cast aside his imperial purple, donned a soldier's gear, and charged into the fray. "The city is fallen, and I am still alive," he shouted, his voice swallowed by the tumult. He fought in the streets, sword flashing, flanked by his dwindling guard. The Ottomans surged, and the last Roman emperor vanished into the melee. His body was never found. Some say he lies beneath the rubble, others that he became a myth, a marble king awaiting rebirth. With him perished Rome's final dream. For 3 days, Constantinople burned. Soldiers looted homes, toppled crosses, and bound survivors in chains. The Hagia Sophia's altar was smashed, its mosaics dimmed as it turned mosque. Palaces fell, libraries smoldered. Yet Mehmed saw beyond ruin. He entered as a conqueror with a purpose, proclaiming himself Caesar-i-Rum, Caesar of Rome, and renaming the city Istanbul. He welcomed Greeks, Armenians, Jews, and Muslims to rebuild, forging a new capital at the crossroads of continents. From Rome's ashes rose an Ottoman jewel, destined to endure for centuries. The fall of Constantinople was a fracture in time. It closed the Middle Ages, ended Christian dominion in the East, and propelled Europe toward exploration. Columbus's sails would rise within decades. Fleeing Greek scholars carried ancient texts to Italy, igniting the Renaissance. The Ottomans reshaped the Mediterranean's power. Rome was gone, its last spark extinct, yet its ghost lingers. In the domes of Washington, the spires of Moscow, the minarets of Istanbul. Empires fall, but their stories endure, whispering lessons to every nation that dares to reach for greatness. This is VERRA Nova, where history is raw and unfiltered. Subscribe, share, and never forget. Every fall has a story worth telling.